Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and in anticipation for the release of Underworld Blood Wars coming out this Friday, I figured it would only make sense to watch all of the other Underworld movies. Even though I heard the last one was a standalone film, I figured that I might as well, just in case something comes up in the other movies. I want to know everything that happened in the other films. I want to revisit them, and I want to see if this really is as bad, and I figured that I just get it out of the way. And let me just say, of course, in this video, I will be reviewing the first installment, that being the 2003 action horror film Underworld. And let me just say right off the bat, I was not at all looking forward to this movie. I mean, I really had no idea what I was getting into. I heard this series is extremely over the top. I heard it's really cheesy. I heard it's really dumb. And I heard that it gets dumber and dumber with each film. So I really wasn't expecting much from this movie. I expected this to be something where maybe it would be a so bad it's good scenario, or at worst, something that very much bores me. I didn't really expect it to be something good. However, to my surprise, I actually really enjoyed this first movie. Now, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy the other ones, but for right now, I enjoyed this movie. I thought that this was very fun overall. It's not a perfect movie, definitely. It has a lot of problems, but definitely, for this film at least, a lot of the positives do outweigh the negatives, and for the most part, I very much did enjoy this movie. But let's get to the plot of Underworld, which the plot of this movie is pretty by the numbers, but it's still quite interesting. We focus on our main character, Celine. She is a vampire death dealer, and what that means is she goes after the vampire's enemy, that of being the Lycans, which Lycans is kind of just a fancy name for werewolves. Basically, they just call them Lycans in this movie. And eventually, she's tasked with hunting down Lycans and everything, and she eventually realizes that the Lycans are going after this human named Michael Corvin and trying to get him on their side, and she does what she can to try to protect Michael, but after he's bitten by a Lycan, she is now contemplated whether she wants to, just do the duty and kill him, or if she feels compelled to maybe go against it and protect him and actually care for him. And things definitely start to get complicated once she starts to feel genuine feelings for him. And that's all I'm going to say about Underworld overall. But let's get into the plot of this movie and the things that we really want to talk about, starting off with the cast. Now, I really wasn't expecting much from this cast overall, I definitely will say. I expect this to be just really half-assed, and I have to say, for the most part, everyone did a pretty good job. I didn't really think anyone was bad in this movie. Definitely there were some that weren't great, but Kate Beckinsale is definitely the highlight of this movie as Celine, and it's not because she is a great character, because she's not. I didn't find her to be the most interesting of characters. I mean, there's definitely interesting stuff that she does being a death dealer, but we've seen this so many times, the vigilante sort of, not vigilante, but we've seen this kind of character before. They really don't do a ton with her in terms of character, but I thought that she was just very, very likable. You could tell that this is someone who is good, who is always thinking logically, and who always wants to do what she can to, help her, to help her group. She's a vampire. She's doing what she can to protect the vampires. This is something that she's been tasked to do. She's done this for years. You get the sense she's done this for a long time, and she very much knows what she's doing, and she, very well is okay with killing a ton of Lycans, because we see her in the very beginning of this movie, she wipes out a ton of Lycans. However, when Michael comes in the picture, things really do change there. I thought Kate Beckinsale did a pretty good job channeling a lot in this movie, emotion. She had some really badass action scenes, and in general, I very much did care for her character. I like what she did here, and I like what Kate Beckinsale did with the character overall. She definitely was really great here. And Scott Speedman as well, I wasn't expecting much from him either as Michael Corvin, but I very much care about his character. This is a guy who, he's a medical student. He really doesn't know what the fuck is going on. Like, most of the movie, he's very confused. But eventually, he does become a hybrid, and their whole relationship, I found to be very interesting, because it is quite predictable where they go with their relationship overall, but I did like the direction that they took it, and I thought that they had pretty good chemistry. You definitely cared about them. You liked the direction the relationship was going, especially with Celine, that she genuinely cared for Michael. You could tell this was someone who she genuinely wanted to protect, who she felt like this was her duty to protect, and I really did like their relationship overall. I thought they did a very good job in this movie, and their whole relationship was definitely very well done. I really did enjoy what they did with them, and they're definitely the best two actors in this movie. Everyone else in this movie, as good as they are, I found to be either way too over the top or just plain downright silly. And Bill Nighy is the perfect example of over the top in this movie. I mean, Victor, you can't get more over the top in this character. I mean, he's saying so many ridiculous lines in this movie. He's saying everything in this very powerful voice like this, and he's always angry. Oh my god, Victor, and he has this very strong British accent, and Bill Nighy's a really good actor. I think he does a really good job here, and it made sense. I mean, it's suitably over the top, and yeah, some of it did get a bit too much at times, but it, like I said, it was suitably over the top. It worked for me. I thought that he was good in this movie. You could tell he's having a lot of fun in this role, and there is stuff to his character, but I thought they did a pretty good job with him overall. He definitely was very threatening. You get that sense that he's a very threatening presence, and I definitely like what he did in this film. I thought he overall was a very interesting character, the direction that they went with him, and you don't expect him to be, what he ends up doing in this movie. You don't expect him to go in that direction, and they did that pretty well here. I like the direction they went in this movie, because I expect him to go in one direction, he went in a completely different one. I like the direction they went with him overall. And then Michael Sheen plays Lucien, who, in the beginning of this movie, they have the knowledge that he is dead. You know, they have a lot of reason to believe that, and we very quickly see that that's not the case, and Michael Sheen was pretty great in this movie, honestly, as Lucien. I thought he did a pretty good job in this movie. They did a good job of getting us to care for his character and kind of getting us to understand him overall. I liked his bond with Victor. Him and Victor definitely have a very heated past, you definitely do see, and that's something that we definitely are going to come across. I thought overall he definitely did a good job. I like what he had to do here, and I thought for the most part he definitely was pretty good in this movie. Apart from a couple other scenes, I thought he was good. My only other complaint with the rest of the cast here is that they don't really have a ton to do. I mean, we have this character of Craven, who Shane Brolly, I think, did an okay job, but he's really just there to create conflict and just to be kind of like a plot device. Like, he doesn't really have much of a character. He's just there to be a plot device, really, and that's really the way the rest of the characters are in this movie. They're not really given anything that's significant. It's not really very heavy character development, and that's something that did kind of make me a little bit upset. I feel like they could have given them a little bit more to do, but they didn't really do that. But I'm not really going to let that affect the overall enjoyment of the film, because I do think these four main cast members overall did a pretty good job. And then really the only other character I really want to talk about, just because of how shocking this actor really was, is Kevin Greavox as Reyes. I mean, talk about a unique actor, really. I mean, this guy's voice in general has to be the deepest voice I have ever heard in a Hollywood film. I have no idea how that voice can come out of someone. I don't know how he's able to talk that low, but throughout the entire movie, he's talking like this, and he's talking like this throughout the entire movie in this very manly voice with a lot of baritone, and there's really nothing else to him. And I will say that I thought that, he is the co-writer of this movie, and you can definitely tell that, and his character doesn't really have a ton to do. He has maybe like 5 lines in this entire film, and then the rest of the movie, he is there when when Lucien needs him to get shit done. That's when he's here, and he really does a good job at kicking ass. He's very intimidating. You get that sense that he is someone who's on Lucien's side. You get why he's on Lucien's side, and I thought for the most part he did a good job here. Again, you can tell he's a co-writer, but he didn't have a ton to do. I just really wanted to point him out just because of how much his character was shocking to me, how startling his voice really was. I mean, it's pretty cool he can talk about it, honestly. That's pretty awesome that you can do that, definitely. Overall, I thought his character was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed him. He definitely did add to some of the fun of the film overall. But now let's get to the directing and the screenplay, because I really do want to talk about the directing here by Len Wiseman, because I really do want to commend him, because this is a very unapologetic film. What I mean by that is that Len Wiseman knows exactly the kind of movie he's making, and he's not trying to make it anything else. He's not trying to win an Oscar here. He's just telling a really fun vampire story, and you know what? It's something that's really different. I really haven't seen a vampire Lycan movie like this before. I thought it was really cool the way he did that. I thought the tone worked really well. It's silly, definitely. It's very silly. It's quite cheesy at times, but like I said, it worked for it. But, like I said, this is a movie that really embraces it. It knows it's corny. It knows it's not the greatest thing ever. It knows it doesn't have the best characters in the world, but it is giving, they really do give it their all to make this as fun as possible, and I definitely felt it. I was having a lot of fun most of the time throughout the movie. I thought Lynn Wiseman did a good job with the directing. Some of the dramatic moments didn't work as well, but I thought for the most part he handled it really well with the directing. I really did like what he had to do here, and like I said, I really did embrace a lot of the cheese within this. And then the screenplay here by Danny McBride, it's not the greatest screenplay in the world. I definitely will say that. And that's not because that the story is kind of been there, done that, because yeah, we've heard the story a million times, two sort of different species against each other, them fighting, and then there's this guy who she doesn't want to kill. It's kind of like who she's supposed to kill, but she doesn't really want to kill him. I think that's interesting overall. But we've definitely seen this a million times, and the movie does a good job at making it seem kind of fresh, but not exactly kind of fresh. Like, it's a movie that definitely, they do stuff with the plot, but it's not stuff you haven't seen before. I'll definitely say that, but it worked for me here. I thought that it didn't need to be entirely original for me to enjoy it. I thought for the most part it worked with the screenplay. My biggest thing with the screenplay is that there is a lot of exposition in this movie, and I mean a shit ton. I mean, there are many times where we'll have some sort of monologue from Celine in the movie, and she'll try to explain the way things are, and I get it. It's the first movie. There's a lot of things that we needed to learn. There's a lot of things that we didn't really know about, and they did a good job of explaining this stuff to us. It made sense for the most part. I didn't really feel like anything was like, oh, that doesn't really make a ton of sense. No, for the most part, it made sense. I thought they used it pretty well, and I thought that it made quite a lot of sense. In the end, I thought that it definitely worked for the most parts. But my one thing is that, there are quite a few exposition scenes I do feel was a bit unnecessary. For example, towards the end of the movie, there's this situation that happens with Michael where he ends up kidnapped by, a character in this movie, and we see Bill Nighy in the film. He has this very long exposition scene stating this entire story between him and Lucian, why they have this tension for each other, the direction that their characters were, and I really felt we didn't need that in this movie. Sure, we knew that these two were against each other, but keep in mind, this is the first movie, and I really didn't feel like they kept anything open for the second film. Sure, they end on a cliffhanger, they do, but they don't really try to keep anything open. They kind of just tell you everything in this first movie, and it really makes me, wonder why the hell they made a prequel in the third movie. I mean, I don't really know what else there is to know, because we pretty much know everything, and I'm not entirely sure why they told us everything. I've said it before, you don't need to do everything in a first movie. There's stuff you can keep open, and this movie really does not know how to do that. It tells you everything, and that definitely did bother me a little bit, but again, I thought the story was simple enough, and the plot was definitely interesting enough that it kept me invested, and I thought the screenplay for the most part worked pretty well. The cinematography here is not great. I definitely will say that. It's very, very apparent this movie was made in 2003, but a lot of it actually is practical effects, believe it or not. Like, when they have a Lycan, it's not CGI. A lot of it, some of it is CGI, but some of it is in fact practical effects. They're wearing masks, or they have someone pretending to be a Lycan, and they did a good job with that. I like the realism in the film. I thought the cinematography worked pretty well. A lot of the movie's very dark, and it works for the most part. I very much got into the action scenes. They're very ridiculous. Like, I mean, okay, vampires with guns, like, it's a pretty ridiculous concept to think about, but again, the movie really embraces that, and I definitely really did enjoy that. I like the way the movie embraced that here. I thought for the most part it worked, and I like the way that they handled that throughout the film. I thought that overall the cinematography was pretty good here, and again, got a bit ridiculous, but it worked for the most part. The score sounds like a video game at points, it really does, but that's okay, because this movie itself feels like a video game, and I mean that in the best way possible. I don't mean that in the sense that this is a convoluted film that has way too much going on, because I don't think that. I think this movie is fun in the sense where it feels like you're watching a video game. You're watching some first-person shooters and things like that, and it's fun to watch, really. I thought they did a good job with the score. I definitely enjoyed it, and the editing in this movie, I will admit, I definitely felt the length several times throughout, like, especially in the second half. The second half was quite slow, definitely. Once Michael turns into a werewolf, and once the plot really starts, the movie does slow down a bit, and it doesn't get boring, I wouldn't say that, but it did get a bit slow, and there were some scenes that did drag on a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Now, the third act really did make up for that, but some of the scenes, it did take a little while to get going. And I don't know if this is because I watched the director's cut, and that was significantly longer than the original cut, but the original cut in general is 2 hours, and the other movies are 90 minutes. And I'm not entirely sure why this was 2 hours, and the other movies are like 90 something minutes. It just didn't really, that doesn't really flow. It doesn't really make a ton of sense why they did that, and you definitely do feel the length throughout this film, and that's something that I definitely will kind of fault the film on, but kind of not. I did definitely feel the length, but I'm interested in seeing the way the movie ended. Definitely was a good ending. I liked the way things went overall. I just felt that some scenes dragged a bit, but never too much to really upend the film overall for me. So overall, guys, I surprisingly really did enjoy Underworld. It's not a perfect movie, like I said. It's very messy at points. It definitely does have a lot of exposition that I didn't really feel the movie needed. The plot's not the most interesting. The movie's not exactly focused a lot on character, but if you can overlook that and just look this as a fun popcorn action film about vampires versus lichens, this is a very fun film, honestly. I really wasn't expecting much from it, but I really did enjoy it overall. Sure, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but again, the director completely embraced it. I think he knows really what kind of movie he was directing, and I am going to give Underworld overall a 4 to 5 or a B+. This movie very much surprised me. I didn't really think it was going to be anything. Like I said, I expected this movie to be kind of shitty or just so bad's good, and it actually was somewhat grounded, actually. They did a good job of keeping it somewhat grounded while also being really corny, and I like the way they combined those two halves together, but it definitely makes me worried that because of how great this one was handled, definitely makes me worried going into the other movies, because I heard they get significantly worse, and I can already tell that, it doesn't, lightning doesn't always strike twice, and I definitely fear that's going to happen with the coming films. So overall, guys, that's my review of Underworld. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Do you like this movie? Did you embrace the cheese? Did you enjoy the ridiculous stuff going on with it? That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be probably for Underworld Evolution. I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be for that, but I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.